Um, Here we are, yes, the Greek landscape. This is slightly different. It's in presenter mode, but okay, we can continue like that. You can see my notes, but it's okay. So, hello, everybody. It's nice being here. Thank you very much for the introduction. Today, I will talk to you about the Greek landscape regarding digital humanities initiatives. But before starting with the initiatives, the digital humanities initiatives, I would like to make an overview of research infrastructures and what exactly are the issues that we face and when using these research infrastructures. I will talk a little bit about the research infrastructures because without them we would not be able to speak today about digital humanities. So the idea of research infrastructures comes back from the history, from the ancient times, where people already knew the importance and the imperative to select and organize and collect all the resources they had, the knowledge they had in hand in a systematic way. So the need to create such information centers like the museum, as we call it, which means museum in Greek, but it's not actually a museum like we have it in mind nowadays. It's not a place we can visit and see exhibitions, but a place where the resources were organized and kept in a systematic manner, and people would go physically and study resources, study specific domains of interest. The first museum, as we call it like that, was the Library of Alexandria. And later on, these systematic environments, the development of such systematic environments, encouraged the production of research infrastructures. So we were led to systematically organize the resources. The importance of such collections, organizations, and conservation aspects of resources, we are in the analog era, of course, we're talking about analog resources right now, have led to medieval libraries and art collections. These can be considered as early databases, as analog databases, the systematic environments that people could use in order to study a specific domain of discourse, to study the resources that were organized within this environment. Different kinds of these analog databases are encyclopedia, disciplines, scholarly disciplines, classifications, taxonomies. All these are systematic environments that have led to systematic resources. Further on, we move to the research tools. The systematic organization has led to the development of research tools. Of course, we're still in the analog era. There's nothing digital here yet. These tools, the first tools that researchers have used were indices, dictionaries, bibliographies, and so on, that helped them organize a specific domain of discourse and organize their work. These initiatives did not embrace the digital era until very recently. There is an exception of the computational linguistics, where people in this domain they were the first that used digital tools in order to study and analyze large corpora, large texts, large resources, big data sets. These were the first, it was the first domain that used the digital tools. But in the remaining domains, there was not a huge the digital tools did not come until recently. Classics was one of the first disciplines that embraced digital research infrastructure. I don't know whether some of you remember the Perseus project that was created, let's say, from the Tufts University. It was the first digital library that contained the classics literature, all texts of literature in Greek and in Latin as well. It was actually, it was created in 1987. At that time, people had to go there and access this digital library. It was not online, but since 1995, it is online, and it still works. It's used, and it still works. This is a screenshot I took yesterday. This first digital library had specific resources, the ancient texts, together with their translation, and also some references later on as the project was moving on. Additional features were added, so we had connections to other bibliographic references, to other texts, and so on. Until now that we have even connections and relationships to visual objects, as you can see on the right side, art and archaeology. So this was the first, let's say, digital humanities infrastructure, if we may call it like that, and it was in classics. Before moving on to the Greek landscape, I want to make a big parenthesis here and talk a little bit about specific numbers regarding digitization. This is an image that I've taken from a white paper of Europeana that is dated in late 2015, so sort of 6 years ago, but the landscape has not changed a lot ever since. What we see here, and what this slide shows us, is that only 10% of Europe's cultural heritage has been already digitized, is in digital format. So the remaining 90% is in non-digital format. Of this 10% of the digital content, only 36% is available online, which means only 3.6% of the total cultural heritage, European cultural heritage was at that point available online. So the numbers are very small. Digital tools do exist, the digital environments do exist, but the content is not enough. Users need more content. They are not satisfied with the content that has already been digitized. We need to move forward and digitize the content in very fast. So what we see is only the top of the iceberg, and let's continue to see the Greek initiatives now. What we have done here in Greece recently. We will start with Polemon. It's not so recent. It's from 1990s and the early 2000s. It was one of the first systems that was developed by the Foundation for Research and Technology in Crete, here in Greece. So it was the first system that digitized archaeological objects coming from archaeological institutions and museums all around Greece. It was a very big project funded by structural funds, and until in its late years, in 2008, 120,000 movable objects have been digitized through this system. Unfortunately, all this content is still not available online. So you realize that the difficulties of digital humanities researchers to work with these resources are too big. I will continue with the participation of my team at the Athena Research Center in different initiatives, digital humanities initiatives. First of all, we have been part of Europeana in different projects, Europeana Cloud, Low Cloud, and Carare, where the goal was to enhance this community, enhance the metadata of Europeana in order to attract users. Here we do not yet talk about only digital humanities community. It's a wider community, but digital humanities are included within the community that Europeana tries to attract, tries to embrace. Later on, we have worked in the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, the EHRI. This research infrastructure had a very specific subject as a goal. We have tried within this research infrastructure to find and connect and support researchers in finding resources regarding Holocaust. So when the domain is so special, so specific, it's easier to develop research infrastructures and also embrace the communities of practice, because the topic is very specific. The same is the case with Ariadne that we have worked in. My team has worked in the first phase, where the foundations of a research infrastructure regarding archaeology were set. So once again, the subject is very specific, so it's easier to build an infrastructure, and it's easier to support a specific group, a community of practice. And here we are now in a very recent project that we have just completed a few months ago, and it's called Apollonis, named after the daughter of the mythological god Apollo. Apollonis is the Greek infrastructure for digital arts, humanities, and language research and innovation, a very big initiative that was coordinated by the DCU in Athena Research Center, and is actually a superstructure, an umbrella research infrastructure that binds Clarin and Daria. Clarin is the European infrastructure for language resources and technologies, and Daria is the European infrastructure for digital arts and humanities. So in Apollonis, we bind the Greek parts of these two infrastructures together and produce a federal infrastructure. What we do in Apollonis? First of all, we assemble, curate, and provide access to resources. We collect resources from different providers, and we curate them and then provide access to interested parties and researchers to these resources that we have already curated. The resources can be digital repositories, registries, text corpora, lexica, thesauri, any kind of different data sets and different kinds of resources. And we then, having them in hand, we provide tools and services for all stages of the resources lifecycle. The tools and services are actually software components that we develop. They can either be executed locally or via the internet, and we can use them in order to retrieve, create, document, extract knowledge, analyze, annotate, edit, visualize, and publish all these resources throughout the life cycle of the resources. And the third, and probably one of the most important goals within this research infrastructure, is that we try to support the creation of communities in practice. And how we do that? By organizing events, specific events of dissemination, and organizing public events that people can take part to, tutorial, user guides, standards, trainings, summer schools, university courses, and all kinds of dissemination activities that can make our work publicly available and enhance this community of practice. This is the home page of the services portal of the Apollonis infrastructure. Unfortunately, it's only in Greek. And as you can realize until now, its scope is general, its subject is very general. It's not specific like the examples we saw earlier, like Ehri and Ariadne. So we wanted to find a way to demonstrate how work can be done within the digital infrastructures and demonstrate the exact activities that people should follow in order to produce outcomes and do the research within the digital humanities domain. What we did is we have selected a pilot action, a pilot use case, which is the decade 1940. Actually, we have selected this time period, the specific time period, because it's of great importance due to the historical events that took place, not only in Europe, but in Greece as well, World War II, occupation, resistance, liberation, civil war. So we had lots of interesting information and interesting events that we wanted to use within our work. We collected at about 93,000 archival resources, archival archival data. Actually, we did not have the data in hand, but the metadata that described this data, coming from 6 different content providers that are named here. And our work was twofold within this pilot action. First of all, we wanted to assemble and integrate all these archival records into one joint, let's say, data set that people could access in a uniform way and retrieve answers from all different archival resources, no matter disregarding the content provider they came from. And the second goal was the fact that we wanted to identify and record all the activities we have undertaken, we have followed in order to curate all these archival records, and then share all these results, all these workflows that we have recorded with the community. So this can be reproduced and produce new outcomes when dealing with other kinds of data. The workflows would remain the same, just the data would change if anybody would like to share the same workflows. Though I'm a computer scientist, I will not get into any technical details. I will just describe the activities that we have followed. This is a map of digital curation activities that we have performed on the archival records that we had in hand. There were actually 2 parallel paths that we followed. The first red branch that you see here on the slide had to do with the creation, the development of a unique index, a uniform index that we could access, users could access and retrieve the results. So what we did after the acquisition, we had to clean and transform all this data to have a specific format, to follow specific rules, data rules. And we represented them using a common metadata schema, which in our case was the EDM, the Europeana data model. We then transformed all this data into metadata, into the common data schema. We have aggregated them using an aggregator we have previously developed in the digital curation unit, the MORE aggregator. And then using open source software, we have performed the joint indexing and produced 4 different indices regarding persons, subjects, time periods, and places. What followed is the publication of these indices. And here you can see the interface that we have developed that users can use in order to retrieve information regarding these resources. The text tabs that you see there is, again, in Greek. I'm sorry about that, but it's only in Greek. The text tabs that you can see there are the search criteria that users can pose and retrieve all the resources disregarding the content provider they come from. So they have been united, and there are universal, let's say, indices that can access this material. So remember that I told you that we also record all the workflows, all the activities that we follow in order to share them with the community. Some of them, the most, let's say, interesting ones for the audience, for researchers, have been transformed into user guides. This is a user guide regarding data cleaning, where we have expressed them as a step-by-step guide that users can follow, indicating the exact software components that they need to use, always using open source software. And so people can follow the same procedures and the same workflows and produce their own outcomes. The second branch that I've mentioned earlier has to do with the enhancement of the information that we had in hand. This information, actually, by studying the resources that we had acquired, we have realized that some some of these resources contain rich information that has not been annotated, that has not been documented. So what we did was to apply natural language processing techniques on these fields and extract additional knowledge. So we have extracted additional entities, additional actors, additional places, and additional events that took place within this time period from the existing resources. This was treated as enhanced knowledge. Together with the original resource, we have formed a different structure, a knowledge graph, where we have semantically represented all this information, which is also publicly available for queries. There's a big advantage and a big disadvantage within this structure. The advantage is the fact that people can pose the queries of high complexity. There are no limitations in the complexity of the queries that users can pose. However, as you can see from this interface, people need to know SparkQL query language, which is not something acceptable, and it's not something that we can support. We do not want to support. So what we try to do now is to exploit different interfaces, open source interfaces that support users in posing such queries without knowing SparkQL. So doing it in a visual way through the interfaces. So I will summarize with some results, going back to the numbers of communities this time that we have spoken about from the beginning. Within Apollonis, within this super infrastructure, we have 65 tools and services, 559 resources, workflows for added values like the decade 1940 that we talked about. But the most promising thing for us is the dissemination that we have achieved through this infrastructure. We count 125 activities, more than 7,000 participants. This is very promising for this small community of practice. So we see that the numbers are promising. And here is an additional slide with some numbers regarding the communities of Apollonis. Here, of course, the digital humanities are included. So we also have Clarin, remember, within Apollonis, and not only digital humanities, that is Daria. However, the results are very promising. We are 11 partners that we have worked for this project. 12 member organizations that contribute content and services upon a specific agreement. We have 307 content providers without further agreements, 800 registered users, which means users that need to authenticate in order to use services that require registration, and more than 130,000 free users, visitors actually, that can also use the freely available services. So from this, I do not have any previous numbers to share with you because it's a research infrastructure that has just been completed, so we do not have other numbers to compare regarding previous years. But what we see from these numbers is that this is a very promising community. The seeds are there, the seeds have been planted, and we need to work more, of course, to cultivate all these seeds. Thank you very much, and please visit us, unfortunately, in Greek.